box usually does get pretty lively during our webinars, so we encourage you to engage and get involved. Throughout the webinar, we'd also love for you to send any questions you have via the chat box, not using the Q&A feature today. We won't have time to answer questions during the webinar today, but we do want to make sure to be able to follow up with folks afterwards. And as always, if you have any technical issues with audio or video, please reach out to my colleague Lisa at lisa.accardi@refed.org. And with that, let's go ahead and jump in. Welcome to a special webinar for the release of ReFed's new landscape assessment, Building a Food System That Works for Everyone, a look at the intersection of food waste with justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We are so excited to present this to you today. We've been working on it for a number of months, and we've enlisted the help of a whole group of amazing individuals from incredible organizations that are doing important and impactful work across the food waste system. This really has been a group effort, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts about the report. You can find the assessment right now on our website at refed.org, and we encourage you all to download and share it with your networks. My name is Lily Hurd, and I'm on the Capital Innovation and Engagement team at ReFed. For those of you who are not familiar with ReFed, we are a national nonprofit working to end food loss and waste across the United States food system by advancing data-driven solutions. One way that we do that is through events like this, where we try to bring the fight against food waste to life through the expertise and experience of a range of webinar panelists. We do have another event coming up soon that I think some of you on the line may be interested in. It's called Food Waste at Retail, first of its kind data from the Pacific Coast Food Waste Commitment. ReFed is a resource partner in the PCFWC, along with our friends at WWF, RAP, and Cascadia Policy Solutions. The PCFWC is a public-private partnership between some of the nation's largest food businesses and jurisdictions along the West Coast to reduce food loss and waste in the region by 50% by 2030. And we have just released new data tracking results in the retail sector over 3 consecutive years from 2019 through 2021. As we say in the title of the webinar, this is first of its kind data that is helping to inform and guide food waste reduction efforts for businesses in the PCFWC, and it can be used as a benchmark for efforts around the country. The webinar will take place on Thursday, June 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, and will be joined by PCFWC signatories, including Walmart. We really do hope that you're able to join us for this event, and you can find the registration link in the chat momentarily. I also want to let you know that we have just released videos from the main stage and breakout sessions from the 2023 Food Waste Solutions Summit, including sessions focused on some of the issues we'll be covering in the webinar today. You can find the videos as well as photos from the summit, which we encourage you to download and share at summit.refed.org, and we'll drop that address in the chat as well. For those of you who are at the 2022 Food Waste Solutions Summit in Minneapolis, you may remember that we hosted a main stage session focused on issues of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or Jedi, which was moderated by Ade Romero Briones from the First Nations Development Institute and featured Yuka Nagashima from Food Shift, Sophia Linares-Coy from the Food Group Minnesota, and Rodrigo Cala from the Latino Economic Development Center as panelists. We also announced that ReFed was developing this landscape assessment to take a look at how Jedi issues related to the food system are affecting the amount of food that actually goes to waste. As part of the assessment's development, we hosted a series of fishbowl-style discussions with some live illustrated note-taking, which you can see on the slide here, where we got a lot of great feedback and reactions from summit attendees. We also hosted some follow-up fishbowl sessions during this year's summit in St. Louis. Throughout the rest of the year, we connected with a number of individuals in the food waste space who have specific experience with Jedi issues and food waste, and offered diverse representation according to geography, gender, age, race, and sector. I want to recognize that many of them have been at the forefront of this type of work for a while now, before it was on the radar for many of us. We also talked with people from sectors not directly related to the food system, but adjacent to it. For example, in transportation, unions, academia, and otherwise. This was and still is a learning experience for ReFed. I think most of us approach these issues with good intentions, but we see them through our own individual lens based on our position within the world rather than within a larger context. So we invited these outside voices, including some of you in the audience right now, to help inform this effort. We thank all of these individuals for their time, as well as for the thoughtfulness and candor that they brought to these discussions. This full list is available in the assessment, but we wanted to share their names here and express our deep, deep gratitude for the support that they've given and provided to the process of creating this landscape assessment. So how do we move from awareness to response? How do we start or continue to implement actionable solutions to promote greater equity, justice, and inclusion when it comes to the fight against food waste? We need to proactively ensure that everyone not only gets a seat at the table, but also that the food being served is culturally appropriate, that it's made available at times and locations that fit into the busy schedules of people with multiple jobs or familial obligations, that it's affordable, that it can be accessed in a dignified manner, and that the people behind the scenes who brought the food to the table have a safe working environment and are fairly compensated for the work that they do. I would be remiss if I didn't note that we are hosting this webinar today, the day after Juneteenth, which was recognized yesterday as a federal holiday for only the second year after being signed into law in 2021 as the first new federal holiday since 1983, when Martin Luther King Jr. Day was created. Juneteenth marks the day when the last enslaved people in the United States learned that they were free and that the Civil War was over. Since that day in 1865, Black Americans have recognized the abolishment of slavery with celebration and joy in the forms of festivals, parades, musical performances, picnics, and much more. I want to highlight that throughout the assessment and within our broader work, ReFed is specifically referring to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or Jedi, in that order to capture these issues. I think that DEIJ, or even just DEI, is a more common way to describe them, but we specifically want to stress that the ultimate goal of these issues is justice, and so that's why we place it first. And as we heard from a number of the people that we spoke to, justice comes from building equity into the food system, which can be accomplished by welcoming and benefiting from diversity, which is an outcome of greater inclusion or having more voices involved in the process. And now I'm excited to welcome ReFed's Executive Director, Dana Gunders, who's going to walk through a top-level overview of our Jedi landscape assessment findings. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you so much, Lily. I share your enthusiasm about the release of this assessment. Thank you to all of you out there that are joining us. It's been a huge amount of work to get here, and we are extremely excited to see your interest and excitement in this topic. And also a big thank you to the Betsy and Jesse Fink Family Foundation, which provided a grant to ReFed that was exclusively dedicated to work focused on Jedi issues within the food waste space. A portion of that grant was used to support internal work at ReFed, trainings and exploration of our policies and practices. But it has also supported the development of this assessment, which we hope helps further the conversation about building justice into the food system. Okay, so to the report. I want to stress that this assessment it's just a starting point. Jedi issues are complex. We know that. We've struggled with it ourselves and continue to, but beginning somewhere and doing something just is better than the alternative. And we thought long and hard about how we should refer to this document that we've written. We were careful about using the word research because we don't want it to seem like it's more rigorous than it actually is. So we landed on landscape assessment to describe it. And as we were conducting our interviews, we realized that there's just so much more to this topic than we could capture in just one document. And that's why we really are referring to it as a starting point, and we hope that this really starts the discussion. For example, most of the focus on this assessment is on food waste's intersection with Jedi issues as they pertain to racial and ethnic differences, But of course, there's a range of issues specifically based on gender, sexual orientation, and more. Our hope is that we can continue to use ReFed's platform to lift up the voices of people who have been out there doing this work across the entire spectrum and spur more action from people who might not have known where to start or how to engage, or maybe weren't even really aware of the issues to begin with. So with this landscape assessment, we had two main goals. The first was to expand the understanding of Jedi connections within the food waste space. So how do Jedi and food waste intersect and impact one another, both positively and negatively? And to stay within our mission, we really focused specifically on food waste. We have not included discussions of intersection between Jedi issues and the broader food system when food waste was not involved. And of course, we know that there's a lot more out there. The second goal is to provide insights that could lead to an evolution in programmatic strategies at ReFed and really help us understand how our work is affecting these issues. But we know that some of those insights may be helpful to others as they work within their organizations as well. So as Lily described, we conducted interviews with more than 30 individuals to start digging into the topic. And after compiling all of our interview notes and looking for common themes, we felt that we could kind of group things into 5 what we're calling insight areas that you can see up on the screen now. So those are treatment of workers in the food system, capital flows, food assistance, infrastructure and processes, consumer education strategies, and food waste disposal infrastructure. And we've structured this assessment so that within each of these insight areas, we have kind of an overview, we have examples of the connections, and then we try to offer some potential solutions that can help. So we have also included short case studies within the report, and that they highlight organizations that are doing great work in the space. And we're excited to have a few of them join us today as to help kind of explain what they are doing. Okay, so let's dive in. Our first insight area focuses on the treatment of workers within the food system. Frontline workers, many of whom come from marginalized communities, are the fuel that keeps our whole food system operating, and they are critical to any efforts to reduce food waste. Whether they're harvesting crops on the farm, working the line at a meat processing plant, stocking shelves at a grocery store, or serving meals in a restaurant, frontline workers are the ones who are tasked with implementing many of the waste reduction initiatives. Yet, at the same time, parts of the food system are plagued with long-standing inequities. Those include low wages, long hours, few benefits or growth opportunities, and sometimes even poor or dangerous working conditions. And that makes it difficult for workers to prioritize food waste reduction efforts, particularly if those efforts are not necessarily prioritized by management. Different pay structures like piece rate systems can lead to actions that can actually incentivize waste, and a lack of diverse representation in management level food industry positions limits the range of voices available to discuss food waste solutions. So what are some solutions to these issues? First, improving working conditions to build a sense of shared purpose. The better workers are treated, the lower turnover rates are, and the more motivated the workforce is. And those are important attributes for implementing a successful food waste reduction initiative. Second, seeking employee input to develop food waste reduction solutions. The most obvious people to engage for ideas are the workers who are closest to waste, and they can identify operational changes that others can't. They should always be consulted when developing waste reduction programs. We have a great recent example with a case study we did at Bob's Red Mill, where they consulted their employees, they sought employee suggestions, and they got over 200 suggestions on how they could reduce waste within their plants. And just one of which, when they implemented, reduced waste by over 70% on that line. that change was simply tightening a screw more often, something that those in management would never have known to suggest. Next, compensating employees for actions and ideas that reduce waste. There may be options besides piece rate systems, like paying employees hourly, but still requiring a reasonable level of output that could help cut waste. Or providing bonuses for employees for waste saving ideas, or providing surplus food to employees after their shifts can also be an incentive. And finally, incorporating into hiring strategies to increase the amount of diversity in food business positions with management or decision-making power. Finding ways that people with lived experience can actually integrate into decision-making can lead to more innovative policies and create an organizational culture that promotes idea sharing. Now I'm excited to introduce my colleague, Minnie Ringland. She spoke with Joanna Jaramillo from Wholesome about the work they're doing in this area. Wholesome is a leading grower and shipper of 100% organic fair trade certified fresh produce. And since obtaining its certification in 2012, fair trade has helped Wholesome amplify the voices of farm workers and open new avenues for equal representation and dialogue. Minnie?
Jeff, I'm not hearing any audio. We might need to restart.
Wholesome Farm was trying to solve by obtaining that fair trade certification and creating the infrastructure for your community of workers to gather?
Yeah, absolutely. So historically, we believe agriculture as an industry, it's an industry where there is a lot of inequity. It's been really prevalent. And so as a company with a long history, we do have that commitment to creating a more noble food system. And part of that is bringing in the farm worker as a stakeholder in that system and making them a partner in that process. So for us, the responsibility is to uplift those farming communities. And fair trade is a framework that has helped us through formal standards regarding, for example, worker wages, working conditions, equity, making sure that everyone's treated with dignity and respect. So it helps us create that accountability in a more formal system. So one of our farms is actually located in a very rural community in Mexico, and there are many migrant workers. So through fair trade, the farm workers have an opportunity to use fair trade premiums to invest them in projects. And some of those projects have been infrastructural. So we've seen a lot of families establish themselves there, bring over their families, and build out the resources and many conveniences to build up the community and have that sense of belonging. So for us, it's really important to be able to offer that to our farm workers and for them to feel like they have a home, like they belong there, they have a community, and they have that sense of security. So fair trade has really helped in that regard.
And where do you see the most intersection between Jedi issues and food waste as it relates to farm work and labor practices?
I think at the end of the day, a system is as efficient as the people behind it. And we are in a business that, the people is the most important part. So again, having a satisfied workforce is really important. When you acknowledge the importance of the people and you give them the proper respect, the proper dignity, there's more trust in leadership, there's more loyalty. And one thing that the Fair Trade program brings through that premium is creating a personal stake in the success of the company. So you see workers, taking ownership in the quality of the product, taking ownership in the work that they do, and really growing within the company. So, we have these long-term employees, reduced turnover, greater satisfaction. So all of that really helps when it comes to, the quality of the product, which in turn helps reduce food waste. So, we get more, it's a win-win situation for all.
Thanks so much, Joanna. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks so much, Joanna and Minnie. So good to hear about the work that Wholesome is doing in the space. I want to highlight that the assessment also features a case study about the Women in Culinary program from Compass Group, which addresses opportunity gaps that exist within the hospitality industry. And they do that by prioritizing women chefs for dedicated training, leadership development, and advancement opportunities. So check that out in the report. Our second insight area is capital flows. Studies have shown that startups and nonprofits that are not led by white male founders and executives receive a disproportionately smaller share of investment and grant funding compared to those with white male leaders. Investments and grants generally flow most easily to individuals and organizations that already have a track record of receiving funding from other sources, and that can perpetuate the cycle. When it comes to metrics for success, many funders have a narrow definition of what they consider impact, and that can limit the field of applicants for funding. And decision makers without lived experience may lack the insight necessary to really create change. So all of this means that potentially game-changing food waste innovations may never get the funding that they need, while at the same time, we risk elevating food waste solutions that only resonate with a portion of the population. So what are some solutions to these issues? First, conduct a review of your organization's funding processes. Many funders don't recognize the barriers that are built into their own funding processes. And when some applicants are able to provide the necessary information, it can be easy to assume that all applicants are able to do that. But really, if you can talk to external parties and ask for honest feedback, that can really be helpful information. The other thing you can do is write out the rationale for each bit of information you request to see if it's really necessary, and take a hard look at what information is absolutely critical to making a funding decision. And whether or not other information that may be more readily accessible for applicants could be just as illuminating. Second, recognize the value of lived experience and community-led organizations. Programs and the distribution of resources could be made more equitable, impactful, and inclusive if funders incorporated a mechanism to explicitly value lived experience. Similarly, building strong relationships with community-led organizations and movements can lead to greater impact, as they're typically the most familiar with the needs and challenges of the communities that they're serving. Importantly, these organizations can be very helpful as funders frame out problems and potential solutions in their initial stages of research and creating their funding process. And they can help educate funders on what a community needs really are. But it's important to compensate them for their time as they're being helpful in that process. Third, create partnerships and opportunities to elevate unheard voices from marginalized communities. Organizations that are led by white founders and have successful fundraising strategies can leverage their platforms to help organizations with funding challenges to gain traction in the space. So this could look like using your social capital and introducing your own funders to organizations that are struggling to raise money. It could be advocating to be a co-grantor for a reference, or a reference for an application, and sharing examples that demonstrate the success of organizations founded or led by non-white leaders, especially when they are not singled out as being diverse, but rather simply because they're doing a really good job. Now I want to hand things over to two of my colleagues, Alex Corey and Angel Vesa, who are both from ReFed's Capital Innovation and Engagement team. They will be talking about ReFed's Catalytic Grant Fund, which so far has funded 10 food waste solution providers, and how the application process was designed to remove burdens on those applicant organizations that might typically have faced hurdles when applying for this sort of funding. Alex, I will hand it off to you.
Thanks, Dana. I'm Alexandria Corey. I'm on the Capital Innovation and Engagement team at ReFed, and I'm talking with my ReFed colleague, Angel Vesa, about our Catalytic Grant Fund. Angel, Talk to us about the key Jedi challenges that ReFed was trying to solve by creating the Catalytic Grant Fund.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were two primary challenges we were looking to address. The first was about the power imbalances that often exist between funders and grantees. And the second was ensuring that as many organizations and leaders were aware of and had access to the grant fund opportunity. And the reason this second challenge is so critical is because we know that food waste requires a systems level approach, right? One in which all types of organizations are involved, not just the established ones that already have demonstrated impact and an ability to scale.
Yeah, fabulous. And what have been some of the key impacts and learnings from the fund's operations to date?
Sure, yeah, one critical learning has been this need to develop a really thoughtful and efficient process for everyone involved in the grant fund. So that includes our grant applicants, our grantees, the team managing the grant fund, external stakeholders, and even within that process, establishing procedures that promote transparency and flexibility. Because as I mentioned, right, we need all types of organizations. So not only did we need to ensure that everyone is aware of and has access to this opportunity, but also that our application and reporting process was phased and transparent so that we're not wasting applicants' time, which we all know is a really valuable resource. And we need to make sure that the criteria and evaluation aren't favoring one type of organization over others. And so just to take a moment, I know I've said the word transparency a couple of times, and the reason that's important is because we've learned that increased transparency really improves communication and alignment between the grant maker and the grantee on the theory of change and overall strategy. So by aligning our work with our strategy, we're really setting ourselves and our partners up with this long-term success because we know we may not see immediate impact with our funding, right? So one way we're doing this is through our application process. So with each question in our application, we're actually providing the rationale for why we're asking this question. And this does a few different things. One is that it forces us as the grant maker to consider whether or not we really need the information we're asked, or if we're just doing it because it's the question that's typically asked. And as a result, this actually pares down the demands on the applicant. But it also decreases, any potential misinterpretations of the question, which then helps ensure that as a grant maker, I'm getting the most accurate information I need and that we're not wasting people's time. So with that, the other important takeaway is just really meeting our grantees where they're at. So our grantees are actually at various stages. Some of them are established but are piloting new initiatives, right? And others are very early stage. So to help ensure we're providing them with useful non-financial support, we created custom support plans for each grantee and have allowed for flexibility in how they share their progress with us as the grant maker.
Wonderful. Obviously, there's been a lot of thought that's gone into this. So talk to us about where you see the most intersection between Jedi, or Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and food waste in this work.
Yeah, and I've talked about a couple of the intersection points, but I would say the greatest intersection, at least in terms of the Catalytic Grant Fund, is really setting it up as an example of what trust-based philanthropy could look like in action as a way to address the power imbalances that currently exist between funders and grantees. So right, that is streamlining and simplifying our processes as much as possible. It's making sure our grantees can focus their time on creating impact. It's being transparent and responsive and flexible in how we work with our grantees. And again, really tailoring our non-financial support to their unique needs.
Wonderful. So looking ahead, what are you most excited about or inspired by regarding the fund's potential?
Well, we just not too long ago selected 7 new grantees. So I'm really excited about the work that we're going to be doing together and actually seeing how we've designed our progress reporting and if it's effective in the way we hope for it to be. Because yes, we're heading in the general right direction, but there's still a lot of room to learn and grow and better reflect trust-based philanthropy in action.
Well, thank you very much, Angel, for sharing that with us. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks so much, Alex and Angel. That's great information. And I know how much thought was put into the design of that. So appreciate you sharing it. We also spoke with Fairbridge Park, a venture and private equity investment firm that partners with entrepreneurs who are tackling societal problems like food waste. Their investment philosophy prioritizes organizations with founders who have lived experience with a personal connection to the problem they're solving. So you can read about their work in the assessment as well. All right, our third insight area is food assistance infrastructure and processes. We know that surplus food has become a key source of food for food assistance organizations, such as food banks, food pantries, soup kitchens, and other community service organizations. And those orgs they've also become a key part of the food waste reduction strategy for many food companies. However, the food donation system has historically been designed more with the needs of food donors in mind than the needs of the recipients of the food. And this results in distribution that does not always meet the needs of the end recipients in terms of access, dignity, and food preferences and requirements. Donated food also does not always meet the needs of the organizations that are receiving it and can end up going unused. So all of these factors can lead to waste of food, whether it's in the organization, at the organization, or in the homes of the end recipients. So what are some potential solutions for this? First, develop a proactive plan for food donation that takes into account which foods are preferred by which recipient organizations. Businesses can explore the recipient organizations within their area to determine which food types each prefers, and can establish relationships with multiple organizations to ensure that no organization is left with food that could become a burden if it's unwanted by its customers. And I should add that when those organizations are throwing food out, it's also a cost to them, which further kind of burdens the whole system that is already underfunded. Second, provide choice that accommodates provide choice and accommodating dignified environments for food distribution. Food assistance agencies should take steps to ensure a welcoming, convenient, and inclusive environment for their clients. This might include things like increasing the number of locations and hours of operation, intentionally fostering a dignified experience, providing as much choice as possible in terms of number and types of products, intentionally using accessible technology, maybe rideshare and delivery applications or online order and pickup systems, and partnering with non-traditional locations that clients already frequent, such as grocery stores, community centers, etc. They may also want to survey their clientele to better understand preferences and reflect those preferences in their donor communications. Furthermore, many people are more likely to seek assistance from others inside their own cultural group or affiliation. So food banks and food pantries are managed and operated by a diverse group of people. They are more likely to attract a diverse clientele. Next, increase funding for SNAP, WIC, and other food assistance programs. Federal food assistance programs give people more autonomy over their food choices, and they make a wider variety of items available. That means that those items can be more culturally appropriate or dietary, meet specific dietary needs, and therefore would be more readily eaten, less likely to be wasted. So increasing funding to these programs, as well as potential subsidies to help with kitchen equipment and transportation to grocery stores and farmers markets, would both enable more dignified nourishment for food insecure people, as well as reduce the amount of food that those people may wind up wasting due to a lack of knowledge or comfort with limited food options that they don't know how to prepare and eat. Third, create state or county level poverty guidelines. There's currently an inequity in current funding levels due to the federal poverty guideline, which doesn't account for differences in cost of living across states, except for in Alaska and Hawaii. or across counties. So providing the state or county level guidelines would provide a more realistic budget for those living in higher cost areas so that they can purchase healthy, nutritious, and culturally relevant food that would not end up going to waste. All right, so what does this look like in action? My colleague Alejandro Enamorado spoke with David Hott from Loaves and Fishes Family Kitchen, which provides hot, nutritious, prepared meals delivered and served to hungry families, children, seniors, veterans, students, and individuals with disabilities throughout Santa Clara and San Mateo counties in California. All the guests they serve are low income, and they have designed their offering in a way to maximize the dignity and convenience of those that they are serving. Alejandro, take it away.
At Refed, and I'm talking with David Hott at the a la carte program at Loaves and Fishes Family Kitchen. David, can you tell us about some of the key equity issues in the food system that Loaves and Fishes was trying to solve by creating the a la carte program?
First, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for giving us the time to talk about a program that's near and dear to my heart. A la carte began, and the focus of a la carte is to provide a dignified way that individuals that find themselves in a situation needing that support can have a free meal. And we are able to do that in a dignified way by the design of the vehicle. The vehicle looks like a catering truck. So truly, you don't have a big sign out in front of the truck, free meals, come here. That's just not what happens. A person can walk right up to the vehicle. We park those vehicles throughout Santa Clara and San Mateo County for an hour, and we build relationships within the community. And it's an opportunity for someone to have a free meal. We don't qualify our guests. So they come up and we're able to provide that meal to them to help them to have a nutritious meal to take with them that day.
And what were some of the key results and learnings from launching this program?
We were able to not only see that, honestly, I'm a hippie with short hair. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, grew up in Cupertino, the home of Apple Computer, right? So I'm all about sustainability and making sure that Mother Earth is cared for. And honestly, I got into the space because I wanted to see food that would otherwise become methane that goes into the ground actually gets used in a dignified and food safe way to provide meals to the communities in need. What we found and what we learned is based on our model and the way that we approached the meals that we provided to the community, we expanded people's palates. Right? People didn't necessarily have the opportunity to participate in having some of the meals that were given to us by the Meta campus, for instance, or Stanford University, right? Who we were provided with donated items from their cafes and dining halls. We were able to package those items in a food safe way and then bring those directly to community centers, schools, churches, and such throughout our community. So what does that do to help? And what were the learnings? Well, we were able to learn how communities get together to learn more about new ingredients, how communities can be helped by providing meals to those said communities in areas that might be considered as food deserts. Because we're a mobile refrigerator on wheels, and it's a temperature controlled vehicle, and all of our team members are food handler certified, we're able to provide that in a dignified way again. And if you show up at one of our serving sites, you get a meal, and you may have never been able to, you had never maybe been exposed to the type of meal that we have provided at many of our serving sites. So that's a way that we worked at some non-traditional attempts at trying to supply meals to individuals that may have never tried quinoas, right? Or different types of tofu dishes, right? I'm a pescatarian, right? And I'm also, again, a hippie with short hair. If I can provide it to those individuals that want to try it, what a wonderful way to do it. So without having someone feel uncomfortable because they're already uncomfortable coming to our vehicle, the package that we package our program in really looks neat and bubbly, and our team is excited about being able to be helpful.
Thanks so much, David.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alejandro and David. We also spoke with our friends at Plentiful about their free, easy to use reservation system for food pantries and the people they serve. And you can find that case study in the assessment as well. Okay, moving on here, our fourth insight area is consumer education strategies. According to new estimates from ReFed's Insight Engine, nearly half of surplus food occurs at the residential level from individuals and families. And interestingly, surveys have shown that lower income households waste a similar percentage of their food as higher income households of the same size. Ensuring that lower income people have the right tools and education to fully use their food can help extend their food budgets. And this is especially important for consumers of donated and discounted food, which typically has a shorter remaining shelf life. Food management skills can be learned, but only if the information is accessible and culturally relevant. And currently there's a lack of tailored interventions to reach marginalized communities specifically. So what are some solutions for this? First, create explicit campaign strategies to reach specific diverse audiences. Creating campaigns to reach those target audiences rather than simply translating existing materials originally designed for a general population can create a stronger connection with the messaging. And it begins during campaign design by including a diverse population in the research that informs the campaign to ensure the messaging and suggested interventions are relevant for those audiences. Messaging should be inclusive of a wide variety of food types that take into account the purchasing habits of different cultures, incomes, ages, physical and mental abilities, whether they have access to transportation and an ability to store food, education levels, availability of time, and more. Potential campaign topics could include proper food storage and management, the cost of wasted food, menu planning, repurposing leftovers, portion sizes, and more general information. Next, serve campaign messaging to diverse audiences in an accessible way. So resources should be made available in many different formats, including audio, visual, written, and different languages. Campaigns could use appropriate distribution channels to create more equitable access to the information. So beyond targeted media, this might include places that are already part of daily routines, such as churches, gyms, shopping centers, festival parks, daycare centers, and more. It's also important to remember that language choices can influence the accessibility of messages, and certain words and terms can be viewed negatively by different target audiences. I want to hand things actually back over to Lily right now. She spoke with Elaine Fiore and Elaine Blatt, the Elaines, as we've called them, about the consumer education strategies used during Food Waste Prevention Week, which I'm sure many of you out there took part in this past April. Lily, to you.
Hi, I'm Lily Hurd, and I'm on the Capital Innovation and Engagement team at ReFed. And I'm talking with Elaine Fiore and Elaine Blatt about Food Waste Prevention Week. Question for you, Elaine Fiore. What are the key Jedi challenges that you are trying to address by creating Food Waste Prevention Week campaign?
Okay, well, first of all, we wanted to make sure that the campaign was fun and it was accessible to all. And having a one-size-fits-all approach was not going to work. So we took a multi-pronged approach to the week. We had our social media campaign, we had webinars, we engaged K through 12 students and their teachers and universities. We had grassroots in-person events. So that way we could reach as many people as possible.
Awesome. A question for you, Elaine Blatt. Can you talk a little bit about the key results and any learnings that you've had from both creating the campaign materials and then distributing the resources?
Sure. One of the things that we know, and that from our research here in the state of Oregon, and this has been replicated elsewhere, is the importance of cost savings as a message for getting folks' attention. And when we think about that here in Oregon, we think it's particularly important when addressing households that are, for example, lower income, where cost savings can actually be an imperative and not just a nice to have. But what we've really liked about the Food Waste Prevention Week messaging and the way it plays out is that because of the multi-pronged approach that Elaine Fiore mentioned, different locations can gear their work to their communities and really speak to the people who live in the local communities where Food Waste Prevention Week is operating. And then the other thing that we have found so useful is literally the grassroots demand for Spanish language materials that's particularly occurred in the last year or so. And we're very excited to see the development of those materials and to participate in that.
Awesome. One more question for you, Elaine Fiore. What are you most looking forward to for future Food Waste Prevention Week campaigns?
I think it's continuing to expand. Last year we had 183 partners. This past year we were up to 600 partners. And I think we're reaching people where they're at. A lot of our partners are municipalities or nonprofits that maybe don't have the resources needed to raise awareness and inspire people to take action. So we're able, through the toolkits and the resources that we create, people are able to use those materials. Just building on the foundation. And we were having a conversation about our planning team. We're like, oh, you know what? We can expand the diversity in our planning team as well.
Amazing. Well, I am very personally excited to see the campaign continue to grow and expand the reach in future years. So thank you both so much for joining us here today, and we'll stay tuned for next year.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Elaine. And I'm sure if anyone would like to get involved in Food Waste Prevention Week next year, I know that they would invite you to do so. We also had the opportunity to speak with our friends at Food Shift, which reduces waste and helps nourish neighbors through its social enterprise kitchen. It offers a number of resources to educate the people it serves, including its seasonal kitchen guide, which prioritizes the experience of consumers who are often overlooked by offering practical hints on using affordable and culturally relevant ingredients available from food banks and food pantries in their service area. Our fifth and final insight area is food waste disposal infrastructure. As many of you know from the food recovery hierarchy, preventing food waste is the primary goal for food waste reduction, but as there will always be banana peels, bones, and other scraps, recycling those scraps through solutions like composting and anaerobic digestion is critical as well. Unfortunately, a range of factors limit the accessibility of these options for marginalized communities. On one hand, marginalized neighborhoods have few composting options, especially as community composting and food scrap collection services are frequently fee-based, and that puts them out of reach for people on fixed incomes and makes it uneconomical for businesses offering those services to plan routes through those communities. On the other hand, some composting facilities are located close to marginalized neighborhoods, as the NIMBY, not in my backyard concerns related to odors and pests keep them out of the higher income areas. And even though those concerns can frequently be overblown when composting best practices are used, there can be increased traffic from trucks and other vehicles that come with their own problems. So bottom line, marginalized communities are not getting the benefits of these solutions, which can go beyond just waste diversion. So what are some solutions for this? First, increase investment in composting infrastructure. There are more than 5,000 composting facilities nationwide, but less than 1% of them accept food scraps. Expanding access to these services will require investments primarily from public sources like government grants and project finance. And building out that infrastructure and ensuring collection extends to all neighborhoods in an area is key. Local community and home composting solutions would bring more of the benefits of composting to the communities being served. And those include greener neighborhoods, soil improvements, community and youth engagement, food sovereignty, fresh compost to support urban gardens, and more. Our friends at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance just released their community composter census, which has a lot of great information about composting around the country. One of their findings is that the employee demographics of composting facilities are much more diverse than other companies in the waste management space. When locating composting facilities, it's important to research the potential impact on specific communities through feasibility studies, impact assessments, and other methods. And it's important to note that composting infrastructure isn't just physical. It should include education and outreach initiatives. For example, in Austin, Texas, residents who compost receive free training and rebates on compost bins. Second, ensure that cost isn't a barrier for people to access composting services. Different municipalities are charging different amounts for composting services. Some composting facilities and food scrap collection services have a pay what you can or sliding scale payment models, which can help. And for home composters who view the cost as the biggest hurdle to home composting, free or reduced price equipment can help them overcome that barrier. Finally, explore innovative ways to collect food scraps from homes that are not served by existing businesses. For example, rideshare companies, grocery delivery services, and others could add food scrap collection to their list of offerings. Our case study for this insight area is the Baltimore Compost Collective, which is a community-led initiative that collects food scraps from residential areas in various neighborhoods in Baltimore. The food scraps are then composted at a community garden in South Baltimore, and that compost is then used to cultivate and nurture a sustainable source of fresh produce, which bolsters food security in the region. We were not able to connect with Marvin Hayes from the Baltimore Compost Collective for this webinar, but Marvin was featured at ReFed's Food Waste Solutions Summit this past May, where he moderated a special main stage session on the work of young people to reduce food waste. He performed an inspiring spoken word poem that I highly recommend you check out. And as Lily mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, videos of those sessions are now live on the Summit website so that you can check it out at summit.refed.org. And that is what we have to share today. We started this assessment to learn more about the intersection of food waste and Jedi principles, and this process led us to many incredible conversations with individuals and with organizations throughout the food system. Despite how informative those conversations were, though, we knew we would only be scratching the surface on such a wide-ranging topic. So the question is, what's next? Well, now that more people are starting to understand the range and complexity of these intersectional issues and the opportunities for action that they represent, we will be determining how ReFed can best highlight the great work that is being done, both existing efforts and new initiatives, and help try to facilitate continued exploration. As part of that, I would love to bring back in my colleague Lily to offer up some calls to action. And I can't do that without an enormous thank you to Lily, who really has been the engine behind all of this work and has poured so much heart and passion into doing it. With that, Lily.
Thank you so much, Dana, and thanks for walking us through the highlights of the report. I know that was a ton of information, so I hope that people can take a chance to, there's an executive summary at the beginning of the report, so that will kind of boil things down, and then areas that you're particularly interested in, you can jump into. So with that, here are some calls to action that we'd like to share with folks today. So first, bring these issues up within your organization. So create change in your own sphere of influence and be bold by bringing these ideas into your conversations with your colleagues, supervisors, managers, etc. Continue to conduct research in this area. Please reach out to us if you've identified a research gap and are looking for partners to help explore it. We have a very big network of folks who are conducting research and would love to create some connections. Third, commit to being a lifelong learner. Continue to have these vulnerable conversations, put yourself in situations that may be uncomfortable, and continue to break down barriers and historic prejudices by learning. Please share this assessment widely, share it, reference it, use it to help you create the more sustainable and resilient and inclusive food system that we all have in our vision. And finally, let us know your thoughts. As we've said, we view this assessment as a starting point, and it will get stronger with more input and feedback from everyone on the line today and the wider food waste community. So if you do have thoughts, please feel free to reach out to us at info@refed.org to share any thoughts, reactions, recommendations, and ideas on what's presented here and what more can be added to future updates. And that is all the time we have for today. Thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone who contributed their time, energy, and insights to help us produce this assessment. Again, you can download it at refed.org using the link that's been put in the chat. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.